How dare someone, a mom, with a 8.5-month pregnant baby.
I was distraught. My family, friends, everybody's talking about it.
And she took a picture last night and said, if this isn't a cry for help, I don't know what is. My mom asked her, why are you putting that vest on? She said, because Mom, he's going to me. You don't understand.
That is a woman putting on a bulletproof vest just to drop her babies off at school. And she already knew exactly how her morning was going to end because she had been telling anybody who would listen for weeks, and not one person with a badge or a gavel moved fast enough to stop it.
And as soon as she went around the corner, he killed her. The courts are not doing anything. They're releasing people.
Her name was Kiara Hudson, and the man who was waiting for her at that corner had walked out of a courthouse a free man the day before, which is a detail we are going to come back to in a way that is going to make your blood boil. But before we get into Kiara's story, let's start with this story. In the early hours of a Sunday morning in September of 2021, there was a car parked on West 128th Street near Frederick Douglass Boulevard, Harlem, with the trunk popped open and gift bags spilling out of it. A few hours earlier, a 31-year-old woman named Shanice Young had been sitting in a hall down the block with everybody she loved, celebrating the daughter she was about to bring into the world. She was 8.5 months pregnant, and the baby, a little girl, was due in about 5 days, and her own father had cut the cake for her that night. There had been music, food, a father-daughter dance, and all the noise a family makes when something good is finally about to happen for one of their own. Then everybody drove home, and the men in the group started carrying boxes upstairs into the lobby. And that should have been the whole story. To understand how this went from a baby shower to candles on a sidewalk in the space of about 90 minutes, you have to understand who Shanice was. And more than that, you have to understand who she used to be with.
You can see dozens of people are out here just trying to support this family.
Because she didn't have to. She didn't have to die. I'm upset because it could have been me.
This man needs to be off the street, and I pray that God convict him, that he will turn himself in, because the streets is mad at what I'm hearing.
Shanice L. Young was Harlem through and through, and she had moved into that building on West 128th Street about 3 years earlier, partly so she could be close enough to take care of her sick mother, who ended up dying of ovarian cancer about a year before all of this. She already had 2 daughters, Shania and Kimora, and on top of raising them, she was also raising 2 of her own younger siblings. Her people described her in the simplest terms, saying that Shanice would give you anything: food, water, the coat off her back at any hour of the day. And her sister said something that stuck with a lot of folks. She said Shanice brought all of them together, and that to know her is to know Shanice. So she carried people, and that was basically her whole role in that family. And the third baby she was carrying, the little girl they would later name Soleil, was supposed to be the next good thing in a long line of good things she was building. I want you to hold on to how normal that night was, because the normal is what makes this hurt. The baby shower was at a catering hall just a few blocks from her house, and there was music and food and drinks and a father-daughter dance. Her dad, Thurman Young, a man in his late 50s, stood up and cut the cake for her pregnant daughter. He would tell reporters later that the last real conversation he ever had with her came right after he helped load those gift bags into the car, and she was hyped, telling him the baby was coming in 5 days. That was the last thing she ever said to him. The father of that unborn baby was a man named Justin Soriano, who was about 40 years old and living up in the Bronx. And Shanice and Soriano used to date and used to live together until she broke it off a couple of months before that September night. And the breakup was not clean, not even a little bit. According to her own father, the relationship ended because Soriano was cheating and Shanice put him out. She kicked him all the way out of her house and her life, and then she went to the courts and got protection on paper. She got 3 orders of protection, which means 3 separate times she stood in front of the system and said, "This man is a danger to me." And 3 separate times the system looked at what she brought them and agreed with her enough to write it down. Nobody ends up with 3 orders of protection because they are being dramatic. You end up with 3 because the first 2 did not do a thing. Her father said she was scared to death of him, and the reporting from that week backs him up, because sources were telling news outlets that this had been going on for years. Sources tell Pix11 Young suffered years of abuse at the hands of her ex. She was finally moving on with her life, but the ex could not let her go.
They're lighting candles and leaving flowers for 2 lives lost. A mother, Shanice Young, almost 9 months pregnant, and her unborn child.
Dear Lord, we pray for this family. Be their strength, be their comfort, be their healing.
During a memorial, family and friends are praying for help, for guidance, and for violence to stop.
This takes all the violence that has been happening over the top. This is a little bit much, and we must do something about this.
This family is torn apart. Police say Young was returning home from her baby shower early Sunday morning when a fight broke out between her ex-boyfriend and the father of her unborn child. The ex allegedly pulled a and opened fire. A hit Young in her head.
How dare someone, a mom with a 8.5-month pregnant baby.
Young's 2 other children witnessed the and they will never be the same. It was supposed to be a time to celebrate a new life, but now they're mourning. Their pain is being felt throughout this entire Harlem community. It's where NYPD Captain Tariq Shepard is from.
I was distraught. My family, friends, everybody's talking about it. You can imagine being a police officer and seeing all the stuff you see and still be saddened. Imagine how people who don't see this on a regular basis feel. And so people are scared. People are upset, they're angry, they're sad.
Sources tell Pix11 Young suffered years of abuse at the hands of her ex. She was finally moving on with her life, but the ex apparently could not let her go. Now police are looking for him.
What's really sad is that we keep having to say that these things are sad. There's no justice for this kind of situation. And so I'm confident in our guys, but whatever the community can do to give tips, let them know what happened out here, they should.
After those long years of abuse, Shanice was finally out, clear and ready to start a whole new chapter with her baby, and Soriano could not stand to watch her do it. So let's walk that night the way the Manhattan District Attorney's Office later proved it in front of a jury, because the version the prosecutors put together is a lot uglier than the version that first hit the news. Somewhere between 1 in the morning and 1:16 in the morning, Shanice and her people pull up to the building. And who is in that car matters, so stay with me. Her 2 daughters are with her, one about 15 and one about 6, and a 31-year-old male friend is with her. And he brought his own 2 little girls, one about 7 and one who was only a year old, strapped into a car seat. And her cousin is there too. That is 4 kids in a car at 1 in the morning, coming home from a party, half of them still buzzing, running in and out of the building while the grown men carry boxes upstairs. Shanice is still sitting in the front passenger seat because she is 9 months pregnant and nobody is letting her lift anything. And the baby in the car seat is right behind her. That is the moment a motorcycle comes rolling down the block, and the man on it is dressed head to toe in black, with his face covered and latex gloves on his hands and a loaded gun on him. Soriano gets off the bike and walks into the building, where Shanice's friend is standing right there in the lobby. He pulls out the gun and starts chasing him through the whole building. The building superintendent, a man named Jose Morales, who had actually helped load those baby shower gifts earlier that same night, watched the entire thing and described it to the Daily News, saying the gunman came in chasing the boyfriend, that they ran through and out the other side and downstairs. Through the lobby, the stairwells, and down into the basement, it was tearing through the apartment building at 1 in the morning while 4 small children were standing out on the sidewalk. Those kids do exactly what kids do, which is run back to the car and climb inside and try to make themselves small. Eventually, the friend gets out of that building and runs right past Shanice, who has now stepped out of the car, and he keeps running toward Frederick Douglass Boulevard until he's gone. And this is where you find out what this really was, because the man he was chasing is gone now, and the so-called threat has run all the way down the block, and there is nothing left standing on that sidewalk except a 9 months pregnant woman and a car full of babies. So Justin Soriano walks back out of that building and goes straight to her. He fired at close range and ditched her on the sidewalk in front of her own building while her 2 daughters watched from few feet away. Shanice Young was rushed to Harlem Hospital and pronounced dead there, and so was the baby girl she was carrying, which means 2 lives were gone about 5 days short of a birthday. Her sister had to get in front of a camera in the middle of the worst week of her life just to correct the record, because the early reporting was already getting her family wrong.
Shanice did not have 4 children. Shanice had 2 daughters, and the 3rd one with her.
Just after 1 a.m., Shanice was returning from her baby shower. She was taking the gifts into her building lobby when police say a fight broke out between 2 men. Neighbors say one of the men was Shanice's ex, the other the father of her unborn child. One of them had a gun that fired off.
I was woken up because of the
hit Shanice in the head.
As you could imagine, it was very tense and emotional last night. I don't think anybody was able to walk around here without crying.
There's a memorial now for the 31-year-old and her unborn daughter.
Stop the violence!
Local domestic violence activist and survivor Stephanie Warm outraged at the unnecessary loss of 2 lives.
I'm upset because she didn't have to. She didn't have to. I'm upset because it could have been me.
And so many wondering the same thing.
It's scary, and it's a little close to home. And who a pregnant woman in front of her kids?
And this message for the
This man needs to be off the street, and I pray that God convict him, that he would turn himself in, because the streets is mad at what I'm hearing.
Tonight, police are still trying to determine who pulled that trigger. The still on the run.
She was a victim, and that is what her sister needed the whole city to sit down and understand, because Shanice was not somebody who got caught up in a fight or threw herself in the middle of 2 men. That mattered because that first version is exactly what went out to the public. The first story people heard was that a fight broke out and Shanice was trying to break it up when she got hit, and the police said it and neighbors said it, and it ran on the evening news. And of all the places in Harlem that this could have gone down, it happened right next door to a building that exists specifically to help families like hers, which almost feels like the universe was trying to make a point. The neighborhood came out, lit candles, left flowers on that sidewalk, and prayed. An NYPD captain who grew up in Harlem stood there and admitted the whole thing had him shook. But the one thing everybody kept saying over and over was that the man who did it was still out there somewhere.
Somebody know where this young man is. Let's get him off the street. It is important. It's not about, I'm not snitching. This ain't no snitching. This is taking this young man off the street.
We're gonna have the best mental health, the best support, and the best work.
And you heard that message there loud and clear. What makes this even more shocking is where the happened. It happened right next door to Harlem Mothers Save. It's an organization where families of victims of gun violence go to get help. Now this family has to go there for help. In the meantime, you heard the captain there say it's only a matter of time before police find the man, but they also need your help. If you have any information on his whereabouts, call Crime Stoppers. The number's right there. It's 800-577-TIPS.
Soriano had run off that block and gone into hiding, and for 4 straight days, nobody could find him. Her father spoke to reporters after the arrest, and there was no relief in his voice at all, because relief is not a thing that exists in that situation.
I'm relieved, but I'm still distraught and sad that he took my daughter's life. You know what I'm saying? I can't get my daughter back, so I'm just numb.
Miss Young was returning from a baby shower. She was 8 months pregnant. The baby did not survive this.
2 of the 4 children, her own, the other 2, her young siblings she was caring for. Now police say the man behind the trigger, her ex-boyfriend, a 40-year-old Justin Soriano, whom she shares a child with, was caught this morning in the Bronx.
Our warrant guys are second to none. in the city in tracking down people. We have, through numerous investigative leads, interviewing witnesses, help from the community, we were able to track him down to an acquaintance's house in the Bronx, and we were apprehending him up in Carlisle Place.
Detectives say early that Sunday morning, Soriano got into a fight with Young's current boyfriend, chasing him down the street and then returning to the 31-year-old expected mother in the head.
30 seconds to a minute, he comes back as she's coming out of the car with 4 young children in the car, confronts her. She says, "What are you doing here?" You know, fires 3 shots, one of which strike her.
And Soriano has an extensive criminal history with 17 prior arrests. He's now expected to be facing charges, and the DA says more charges could be pending.
Now, let's talk about Justin Soriano's paperwork, because this is where the pattern in this whole video starts showing itself. When he got arrested, reporters were told he had a long criminal history, and the numbers being reported changed depending on which day you happened to be watching. 17 was the figure that went out during the week of the arrest, while later coverage tied to the end of the case put the number at 9 prior arrests for things like drugs, resisting arrest, and assault. But whichever number you take, the shape of it stays the same, because this was not a man the system had never met before. The DA charged him with murder in the 2nd degree, 2 counts of criminal possession of a weapon in the 2nd degree, 1 count of menacing, and 4 counts of endangering the welfare of a young one. And that last charge is 4 counts because there were 4 children in and around that car. I want to explain why those 4 little misdemeanor counts actually matter, because on paper they look like nothing sitting next to a murder charge. Under New York law, endangering the welfare of a child means you knowingly did something likely to hurt a child's body, mind, or sense of right and wrong. So you do not have to touch or hurt the kid, you just have to knowingly create the kind of situation where a child could be destroyed. And a masked man running through a lobby with a gun while babies are out on the sidewalk is that situation exactly. The case took a long time to get where it needed to go, but on the 21st of November, 2024, a Manhattan jury came back and convicted Justin Soriano on every single count. And then on the 3rd of April, 2025, Justice Ann Schertzer sentenced him to a total of 40 years to life in state prison. He was 44 years old at the time, which means he doesn't even get to see a parole board until he is well into his 80s. Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg put out a statement afterward, and the line that stuck with people was that Soriano did this in front of 4 children, including Shanice's own daughters, who helplessly watched her mother die right before their eyes. He also said that Soriano killed her on what should have been one of the happiest nights of her life, and that the pain her family carries is still with them today. The defense said at sentencing that they planned to appeal, and as of today, there is nothing public showing that appeal has been decided one way or the other. They buried her over 3 days, starting with a private family ceremony, then a public procession on the 23rd of September with a horse-drawn carriage carrying her casket from 125th Street all the way to Canaan Baptist Church, with dozens of people walking behind it. Then the funeral was the next day at Unity Funeral Home, where they held the service in both English and Spanish so that every side of her family could hear it in their own language. Her daughters were there, and the lieutenant governor was there too, and he called what happened to her a national catastrophe. Through all of it, one thing keeps coming back to me, which is that Shanice did everything right. She left him, put him out of her house, went to court not once, but 3 separate times, had the protection order and the system on her side, at least on paper. But a piece of paper does not stop a motorcycle, and that is exactly what brings us to Buffalo. Kiara Hudson was 30 years old with 3 kids living in Cheektowaga and Buffalo area of Erie County, New York. And by the fall of 2022, she was doing the thing that a lot of women in her situation spend years working up the courage to do, which is leaving. Her husband was Adam Benefield, about 45 years old at the time, and I need you to know exactly who this man was before you hear another word about Kiara, because everything that happened to her flows straight out of what the system already knew about him and chose to do nothing with. Back in the year 2000, Adam stole a car and drove it directly into a vehicle his ex-girlfriend was driving on Route 33 in Buffalo. He rammed her car on purpose, and then he got out and forced her and another woman into his vehicle at gunpoint. The ex-girlfriend was so terrified that she told him she was pregnant with his child, hoping that would be enough to keep her breathing, and the other woman only got away because she jumped out of a moving car. While he was locked up waiting on that case, he climbed a 15-foot wall and escaped from the Erie County Correctional Facility, and they had to run a 19-hour manhunt to bring him back. When they finally caught him, he stood in front of the cameras and talked about nobody but himself.
The reason for all this is because I want to get some help. The doctors refused to give me any help. As you see, I slipped my wrist, and I just wanted to get some help. Nobody wanted to help me.
That is Adam Benefield speaking with reporters in 2000. At the time, he was 22. He'd escaped from the Erie County Correctional Facility in Alden by scaling a wall. Police eventually captured him in a friend's home. Benefield served close to 15 years in prison for escape and kidnapping when he forced an ex-girlfriend to drive at gunpoint. Every time he spoke, it was about his mental health.
They knew that I got problems, and they just don't want to help. They ignored all my requests. They started ignoring me at the jail.
That was 22 years ago.
He pleaded guilty to attempted kidnapping and to the escape and was sentenced in November of 2000. He served about 15 years before walking out in June of 2015. 7 years after that, he was married to Kiara Hudson. Here is the thing I keep coming back to, because when the state of New York let Adam Benefield out in 2015, they knew exactly what he was. He was not a mystery to anybody, and his whole method was already written down in a court file. Ram the car and then bring the shotgun, all of it sitting there in black and white years before Kiara ever met him. Kiara herself was born in 1991, and she was a private person, not somebody with a public life. Most of what we know about her comes from her own family speaking after she was gone, and what they described was a mother, plain and simple, with 3 kids, a daughter about 9, another child about 4, and a baby. Her mother is Tammy Hudson, and her sister is Montasha Jeter. The father of one of her children, a man named Andrew Hodge, also spoke publicly and said Kiara used to call him asking what she should do. She was asking everybody all the time, and not one person had an answer that actually worked. And she was in hell because the abuse in that marriage was constant, and unlike a lot of these stories, this one is not built on rumors or on what somebody's cousin heard. She documented it herself on purpose because she knew where this was heading and wanted the world to have a record. On the 28th of September 2022, Kiara took footage from her own home security camera showing her husband beating her and posted it publicly on Facebook, almost 8 minutes of it. The caption she wrote is the part that should make everybody watching this uncomfortable, because she wasn't just showing what he did to her, she was answering something. And she kept going because her sister, Montasha Jeter, described what the last stretch of Kiara's life actually looked like. Kiara moved out and was staying at her mother's house because she didn't feel safe anywhere else. She was working with a domestic violence advocate, trying to get into safe housing, and was going back and forth to police stations with her sister and was gathering video. She had court coming on top of all of that because Benefield was trying to get custody of the kids. And somewhere in the middle of all of it, she started wearing a bulletproof vest every single time she left the house. Now here is the timeline that the family's lawyers went after later, and once you see it laid out plain, you're going to understand why. Around the 3rd of October 2022, Kiara handed home video footage of an attack over to Cheektowaga police, which means she walked physical evidence into a police station. He was arraigned in Cheektowaga County Court and released that very day on his own recognizance, which means they handed Kiara an order of protection and then held the door open for the man she was afraid of. Buffalo police laid the whole sequence out at a press conference afterward, and the part where they explained why he couldn't be held is the part that broke the city in half. The video showed a much more violent incident than what was originally reported to the original responding officer. Those officers called in detectives to the scene to begin a further investigation that night. The domestic violence advocate was advised that the charges were not qualifying charges and that the suspect could not be held. So, domestic violence advocate insisted that an order of protection be issued. The suspect was arraigned and a stay-away order of protection was issued against the suspect. The suspect was released by the court. Under the bail rules in New York at that time, the misdemeanors they charged him with didn't qualify for bail, so the judge legally couldn't hold him even if the judge wanted to. And the only reason they didn't qualify is because of what the police chose to charge him with in the first place. The 7 News I-team put the timing in the plainest words they could find. Our 7 News I-team was the first to discover just 24 hours before Hudson's murder, authorities had Benefield in custody and charged him for assaulting Hudson, but a judge let him go because the charges didn't qualify for bail in New York. Kiara went back to her mother's house that night, and she already knew. The morning of the 5th of October 2022, Kiara Hudson gets ready to leave her mother's house because she has to drop her 3 children off at school and then get herself to court since her husband is trying to take custody of her kids. And before she walks out that door, she puts on the vest. Her mother watched her do it and asked her why, and what Kiara said back has become the single most quoted line in this entire case, and it is going to sit in your chest long after this video ends.
Why are you putting that vest on? She said, because Mom, he's going to kill me. You don't understand. And as soon as she went around the corner, he killed her. He smashed into the front of her car in front of a school bus and got out the car with a shotgun and shot her and pulled off.
She said that to her own mother and then got in her SUV with a 9-year-old, a 4-year-old, and a baby. And as she drove around the corner, her words happened exactly the way she said they would. Around 8:30 in the morning at the intersection of Shawnee Avenue and Richlawn Avenue in Buffalo, Adam Benefield drove his pickup truck straight into the front of her SUV on purpose, which is the same move he pulled on Route 33 back in the year 2000. Then he stepped out of that truck and walked up to her vehicle with a shotgun and shot her, first in the shoulder and then in the head. The vest covered her body, but a vest cannot cover a head, and she died right there in the driver's seat with her 3 babies in the back of that car for every second of it. The 9-year-old, her daughter, told the police who came running that it was Benefield, and she did that right there on the street. Andrew Hodge, the father of one of those children, spoke to reporters that same day, pointing them back to the video that had been posted on Facebook. Benefield ran and was gone for a full week. He was considered armed and dangerous with wanted posters up all over Erie County. And on the 12th of October 2022, Buffalo police finally caught him. The neighbors on the street where they took him down were out there cheering.
We begin tonight at 6 with the new developments in the case of a man accused of killing his wife. And after spending a week on the run, that man is in police custody tonight. Good evening, I'm Mary Alice Demler.
Hello again, I'm Scott Levin. 45-year-old Adam Benefield of Cheektowaga was arrested this afternoon and has already been arraigned on 1 count of murder and 3 counts of endangering the welfare of a child. Benefield is accused of shooting and killing his wife, 40-year-old Kiara Benefield, last Wednesday morning while she was inside her car with their kids on Richlawn Avenue. Today, Buffalo police say that it was a tip that led to the coordinated effort to bring him into custody.
This was a nonstop effort by our homicide squad, by officers within the district that were constantly keeping an eye out. But our community members are the eyes and ears of everything that happens in the community. So we are very grateful for that participation, that assistance with the community.
So for those living in the neighborhood, it was a big relief to have this wanted man off the streets.
And our Claudine Ewing spoke with residents and witnesses just after the arrest was made today. She joins us now live outside Buffalo Police Headquarters with that part of the story. Claudine?
Scott, Mary Alice, it was quite a scene today on Bissell Avenue when he was actually taken into police custody. In fact, neighbors on the street were cheering. But now Adam Benefield, as you mentioned, he's 45 years old. He has a charge to now deal with. Take a look at the video that we received today. This is video of him in police custody after one eyewitness saw Police tackle him in the field. He didn't resist arrest because he was surrounded by officers. Some people saw him just around the corner from where he was captured at a shelter getting food just yesterday. Now, last week, 1 week ago today, his estranged wife, Kiera, was shot and killed in a car in front of her children on Richlawn and Shawnee in Buffalo. This was just a day after Cheektowaga police let him out of jail for a domestic violence incident. For 1 week, he's been on the run, but that ended today.
Just yesterday, y'all thought he was in Atlanta or Oregon. I'm watching the news. So there you go. Think smart, think swift. Because the Coco Chanel mask was what was the giveaway. You have on a female mask, you're a man. And then it was the eye contact, the way that he was looking at me. So I called the police last night.
And police now have him, and he will be closely watched since he escaped from the jail in Alden about 15 years ago or so. And so once again, once he goes before the judge, if he is convicted, he faces 25 years to life in prison. Outside of Buffalo Police Headquarters, Claudine Ewing, Channel 2 News.
At his arraignment, the prosecutor did not try to soften a single thing. He pleaded not guilty, and Justice Bill Bowler ordered him held without bail this time around. That is when the real argument started, because Erie County District Attorney John Flynn stood up and said the quiet part out loud, which is that his own officers charged the case correctly under the law as it was written, and the judge had no legal room to hold that man. Kiera's family did not just grieve, they organized. And a mother and daughter in Buffalo who had never even met Kiera started a petition for something they called Hudson's Law, which would make people convicted of domestic violence ineligible for bail in the state of New York.
A man accused of his wife facing a judge this morning. Adam Benefield faces child endangerment and criminal contempt charges. He is accused of Kiera Hudson in front of her 3 children. That was just after Benefield was arrested on domestic violence charges the day before, but released. This case shining the spotlight on bail reform.
The state of New York versus Adam Benefield.
The man accused of his wife earlier this month was arraigned Friday morning. 45-year-old Adam Benefield is charged with Kiera Hudson in front of her 3 children.
Mr. Benefield has been indicted by a grand jury of Erie County.
Benefield faces 1 count of in the second degree, 3 counts of endangering the welfare of a child, and 1 count of aggravated criminal contempt for allegedly violating an order of protection.
People's position. Your Honor, as I'm sure everyone's aware, the allegations contained in this indictment are horrifying. They are the stuff of nightmares.
Benefield pleading not guilty before State Supreme Court Justice William Bowler, who ordered him to be held without bail.
He was remanded, continued to be remanded. He faces, obviously, 25 years of life in prison if he is convicted.
This case shining a spotlight on bail reform because Benefield is accused of Hudson 1 day after he was arrested and released in connection to an alleged domestic violence incident.
The charges were correctly charged, and the judge, again, had no choice but to release this person.
District Attorney John Flynn renewing his call to review recent bail reform laws.
The specific solution is that we give judges the ability to factor in dangerousness when they are assessing bail. Insert 1 simple sentence.
Governor Kathy Hochul fielding questions Friday about bail reform and this case.
We did make targeted changes to the bail laws. I think that is absolutely overlooked in this heightened political atmosphere. Everything's supercharged. I don't think that's the answer. The answer is to make sure that a woman like that poor woman, has the support system she needs, has the ability to get an order of protection.
When I spoke with Kiera Hudson's family the day she was, they told me not only did she have an order of protection, but she was also wearing a bulletproof vest.
Because, Mom, he's going to, you don't understand. He smashed into the front of her car in front of a school bus and got out the car with a shotgun and shot her and pulled off.
Not only was there an order of protection issued, a safety plan was issued as well to have her move out of the home and into her mom's house. But obviously the safety plan didn't work either.
The district attorney says Kiera Hudson's 3 children are doing well considering and staying with family members. Benefield is scheduled to be back in court November 2nd.
Then, in October of 2024, Kiera's mother filed a wrongful death lawsuit in Erie County Supreme Court against the town of Cheektowaga, the Cheektowaga Police Department, and Benefield himself. The argument in that lawsuit is simple and brutal because police had the video and police knew about the 2000 kidnapping, and with all of that sitting right in front of them, they filed misdemeanors, and misdemeanors are the whole reason he walked. The suit says the town and the department were careless and reckless, and that this one failure gave Adam Benefield the exact opening he needed. And the family is asking for wrongful death damages, for the pain Kiera felt before she died, for the psychological damage done to the children who watched it happen, for lost income, for the funeral, for all of it. But you and I both know none of those numbers are really the point, because the point is the paper trail, and the point is making somebody write down officially that this did not have to happen.
1, 2, 3.
He can lift me! Of course I can. You want my seat? Raya, move before you drop me.
Yay! 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 Chuckles! Chuckles! Yay!
You should be okay with that.
Yay! Yay! Yes!
The criminal trial ran 3 days in November of 2024, and the 9-year-old daughter took the stand and testified against the man who killed her mother right in front of her. Prosecutors put in the shotgun shells they pulled off the street, the damage on both vehicles that proved the ramming was intentional and not some accident, and the medical examiner's testimony about how she actually died. The jury was out for about 1 hour before they convicted him on every single count. On the 23rd of December 2024, Justice Bowler gave him the maximum, 25 years to life, and the acting district attorney called it a cold-blooded murder. He said Benefield intentionally shot his estranged wife in the head in front of her 3 small children and made a point of thanking that little girl for having the strength to testify against her own mother's killer. There was a legal expert on one of those broadcasts who tried to say the responsible thing about all of this, which is that most domestic violence situations do not end in murder, and changing bail laws have a real consequences for people who are never going to turn into killers. She's not wrong, and that's an honest tension, and I'm not going to pretend it away. But Adam Benefield wasn't some hypothetical, because he was a man who had already done this exact thing to a woman once before and gone to prison over it for 15 years. And if the system can't tell the difference between him and everybody else, then what exactly is the system measuring?
Criminal sentencing got heated this afternoon as Adam Benefield would learn the fate he faces for killing his estranged wife, Kiera Hudson, in front of their children.
I'm here because I don't want to be here. I'm forced to be here to fight these charges.
All right, thank you. You're here because the jury convicted you of brutally killing your wife.
Interrupting me while I'm talking. I don't interrupt you, so why do you keep interrupting me? I know you can judge, but
Okay, hear me out. I've heard enough of this narcissistic. You're a narcissist, and I'm not going to put this family
You're a
again.
narcissist because you're talking and you're going all.
Shut his microphone off, and if you keep talking, I'm going to do it without you. You'll be in there. I've heard enough from you. You, your wife, a jury of 12 convicted you.
A white jury that did not have any black jurors on there, and that's not law. That is a setup. So you want to send me out there, I go out there, but you know what the law is, and you haven't followed it. And neither has you, and neither has you.
All right.
Everybody sat here and
Hear me out. Shut up.
I'm not going to shut up.
Get him out of here.
Get me out of here.
We wanted to take you in the courtroom so you could see exactly what happened. Benefield was sentenced to the maximum 25 years to life behind bars for criminal contempt and endangering the welfare of children.
Barely 1 month after Kiera lost her life, another mother would lose hers in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota in November of 2022. Zaria McKeever was 23 years old, born in August of 1999. Her sister used to call her an army brat because both of her parents served in the United States Army, and the family moved all over to Georgia, Michigan, Alabama before they finally settled in Minnesota when Zaria was only about 3. She graduated from Champlain Park High School and got her cosmetology degree from PCI Academy in Plymouth. Her sister, Tiffany Epps, described a bond between the two of them that most people never get to have because they plotted their whole lives out together. Zaria had picked Tiffany to be her babysitter years before she even had a child, and when they finally did get pregnant, they got pregnant around the same time and gave birth 1 day apart. Her family said she was born to be a mom and had the names picked before she was even pregnant, and her daughter, Zanae, was about 1.5 years old when all of this happened. And Zanae's father was a man named Eric DeJuan Haynes. Haynes was about 22 when he got with Zaria, and during that relationship, he got tight with her whole family, so tight that at one point he was calling her mother Mom. That's how far inside her life he had gotten. Then, in the fall of 2022, Zaria ended it, and that's when he turned. His pain was that Zaria wasn't falling apart after that breakup, she was doing the exact opposite, and as her family put it, she was bettering her life. Zaria had her own place, a car, and people around her who actually loved her, and had started seeing somebody new, a man the court records refer to as RC. Her sister said he was jealous of Zaria for having a car, better family, a home, and people who actually loved her. So he started stalking her. And in the weeks after the breakup, Haynes was harassing Zaria by phone and in person, following her around and violating the no-contact orders that were already in place to keep him away from her. Surveillance video from her apartment complex would later show a vehicle connected to him at that complex multiple times in the days before she died. Her sister watched it happening in real time.
Your evil and jealousy, that's what led to it.
Tiffany Epps says Monday was a typical day, with one exception.
Me and my sister went somewhere and her child's father was following us.
He told people too, because he told her new boyfriend that Haynes had been following her and that she kept seeing men she knew to be his friends hanging around her apartment complex. He told her father, Presley McKeever, who had gotten worried enough that he started calling his daughter more often just to check in on her. 2 days before she was killed, in what turned out to be the last conversation they would ever have, she told her father she was planning to move all the way to Texas just to get away from Eric Haynes. So she was 48 hours from telling him she was leaving the state. And here is where this case turns into something different from the other two, because Eric Haynes did not pick up a gun himself. He went and found children to do it for him. There were 2 brothers in the area, Fode Kevin Kamara, who was 15 years old, and his older brother John Kamara, who was 17. And Eric Haynes influenced both of them. What he did with that influence was hand Fode a 9mm handgun, tell the brothers to go to RC's apartment and tell them to shoot him if the confrontation didn't go the way he wanted. On the night of the 8th of November 2022, Eric Haynes drove the Kamara brothers to Eden Park Apartments in Brooklyn Park, Minnesota. They went up to the apartment together the first time, knocked on the door, and when nobody answered, they left. That right there was the moment where every bit of this could have stopped, because he had the chance to drive off and go home. Instead, he sent those 2 boys back alone and sat in the car waiting. The brothers went back and kicked in the front door of RC's apartment. RC was in the bathroom when he heard that door burst open and heard the arguing. He jumped out of a 2nd-story window and ran, and that jump is the only reason he's alive today. However, Zaria was still in that apartment. She had a knife in her hand when she came to that door, standing her ground and facing 2 people who had just kicked it in. But here's the part her family can't get past, and it might be the saddest detail in this whole video, because Zaria knew those boys. She recognized their faces. They were her baby dad's friends, and her sister believes that's exactly why she didn't run. She thought she could talk to them and calm the whole situation down because she knew who they were.
Zaria McKeever's family say they want justice. The 23-year-old Brooklyn Park woman was fatally shot
last week in a case connected to her former boyfriend. Police say McKeever was shot multiple times by 2 home invaders sent by the former boyfriend and father of her 1-year-old child. Her sister says she will never get over the hole that is left in her heart. Here's reporter Sonia Goins.
She's more a people person. I like to be to myself, so it's like every day she's like, "You want company?" I'm like, "No." She's like, "Well, we're outside."
Tiffany Epps is Zaria McKeever's older sister. She says they were more than siblings. They were also best friends.
I don't know, we literally are together pretty much every single day, so it's like, it's just crazy and different. My daughter's there. She always does them with her.
Pictures and videos are reminders of the good times the two shared together.
Just thinking about her smiling and her laughing and makes me smile. Thinking about all the stuff we did together, all the memories that she did leave.
Tiffany says her sister made the most out of life.
She loved life. She just loved everything about it. Anything that was good to her was overly good, you know?
The Champlain Park graduate was a makeup artist and loved to draw.
She was just really bright and fun and positive.
Get that booty over here.
Tiffany is now taking on the role of mother for Zaria's 1-year-old daughter.
Literally can't give him a kiss without giving her a kiss.
But she says nothing can replace her mom.
I'm just gonna miss her being here with her daughter. Her daughter is so happy with her. They had like their own little language.
Instead of getting ready for the upcoming holidays, the family is instead planning for Zaria's funeral.
We were like working on the obituary. It's just hard seeing that it's her picture there, you know?
Zaria's family says she was a shining star whose light will forever burn bright in their hearts.
I mean, I know she'll be looking down and be proud of her, but of course her physically not being here is a big thing.
Sonia Goins, CCX News.
Zaria McKeever's family set up a GoFundMe page to help pay for funeral costs and expenses for her young daughter. You can head to our website, ccxmedia.org, for more information on that.
Fode Kamara fired shots into the wall first, trying to scare her off, and Zaria came at him, and then, according to what he himself told investigators, he shot her 5 times, including at point-blank range in the head while she was down in a hallway close. He also accidentally shot his own brother in the foot in the middle of it. Then the two of them ran out of that building, and Eric Haynes drove them away. Brooklyn Park officers got the call around 2:30 in the morning about a possible home invasion, and when they got inside, they found Zaria McKeever shot multiple times with a 1-year-old daughter at home. The investigation moved fast because police had surveillance footage of the vehicle linked to Haynes circling that complex in the days beforehand. They had video of 2 boys running from the scene and RC's testimony of exactly what he heard. Then the cover-up started because Eric Haynes did not do this alone and did not clean it up alone either. His sister, Ariana Dewana Haynes, and a man named Tavion Michael Darnell James took the injured brother, John Kamara, to the hospital. Then everybody gathered up in a hotel room at an extended stay in Brooklyn Center, and Haynes' own mother, Valesha Parker, was lying on the bed in that room while her son told Fode Kamara to go hide the murder weapon. Then she looked the police in the face and told them she did not know anything, except that body camera footage and hotel videos said otherwise, and the gun turned up in a car parked in that same hotel lot. So now you have a whole family closing ranks around a killer, and you would think that with all of that on the table, the prosecution part of this would be the easy part, but it was not, because it turned into the biggest fight in the entire case. The Hennepin County attorney at the time, Mary Moriarty, decided not to certify the 2 teenagers as adults, and instead she offered them a plea deal that would have put them in a juvenile facility at Red Wing for 2 years or less. Zaria's family lost it, and so did a whole lot of Minnesota. Moriarty defended her call, arguing that a young person's brain is not fully developed until about 25, and that a juvenile sentence with a long adult prison term hanging over the kid's head was the best way to protect the public while still getting accountability. And to be fair to her, she was not making that up out of thin air, and she said flat out that the people of that county elected her to make exactly this kind of decision. But Zaria's family was not trying to hear it, and neither was the Attorney General of the state. Keith Ellison's reasoning came down to one thing, which is that Fode Camara knew Zaria and her 1-year-old daughter. He had time to think it over, change his mind, put that gun down, and walk right back out of that apartment. And once it was in his hand, he went through with it anyway. Zaria's family started fighting, lobbying, and petitioning, sitting in meetings with state representatives, and Tiffany Epps went on camera over and over again and refused to let it go. It actually worked because Governor Walz took the case away from the elected county attorney and handed it to the attorney general, which was only the second time in the entire history of that state that a governor has used that power. He called the family himself to tell them. Moriarty was furious about it and said so publicly, calling the whole thing unprecedented and saying it should alarm prosecutors across the state.
A major shakeup in a high-profile case.
For only the second time in state history, the governor used his power to put a new prosecutor in charge. 2 teenagers are accused of killing Zaria McKeever. A plea deal with the new Hennepin County attorney meant they could have avoided going to prison. But now the attorney general is taking over. New tonight, David Schuman spoke with McKeever's loved ones who have been fighting for this change for weeks.
Governor Tim Walz called Zaria's family personally this evening and broke the news to them. Having Keith Ellison take over the prosecution of this case is what they prayed for, and they say this is a victory that gives them hope for justice.
We were screaming at the top of our lungs when we heard.
A call came in Thursday from an unknown number. On the other end of the line, Governor Tim Walz to tell Zaria McKeever's family he reassigned her case to Attorney General Keith Ellison.
It was just a breath of fresh air. You know, it's just like we were able to breathe a little bit right now.
McKeever was last year in her Brooklyn Park apartment. Investigators say on the order of her ex-boyfriend, Eric Haynes, 2 teenagers broke in, one of whom is accused of her multiple times. Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty chose not to prosecute the teens as adults, offering plea deals that would have them released after a couple years in a juvenile program. Ellison disagrees with the decision.
The disposition the county attorney has proposed for this juvenile who was in this heinous crime is inappropriate.
We have our days where we don't feel hope, we don't feel like getting up. We haven't really started the grieving process because we're having to fight every day.
With the case taken away from her, Moriarty stood by her decision, saying in part, it gives us the best chance to protect public safety by investing in rehabilitation while still having accountability. The people of this county elected me to make that difficult call. Moriarty says Ellison's takeover should alarm prosecutors across the state because it threatens the very core of their role as an elected official accountable to the people.
We don't wish her any ill feelings. All we wanted from day one was for Zaria to get justice.
There's hope, and there's hope for other people. I hope this gives them hope.
One of the teenagers has already pleaded guilty, so Ellison says it's probably too late to change that. The other, though, had a hearing scheduled for tomorrow. As for Zaria's ex-boyfriend, he's been charged with second-degree murder, and 2 other adults are also facing charges in this case.
Yeah, and we'll, of course, keep following this. Thank you, David.
Here's how it all finally landed. Fode Camara was certified as an adult and charged with murder, and he pled guilty to second-degree intentional murder and agreed to testify against the grown men in the case. In May of 2024, he was sentenced to 130 months, which comes out to just under 11 years. The judge went below the higher sentence because of his age and because of how badly Haynes had worked him. And the prosecutor told the courtroom that Haynes had promised the boy he would only do 5 years tops if they got caught. And the shot to the head was no accident. His brother John got about 2 years at Red Wing. His sister Ariana got 41 months. Tavion James got 364 days in jail with prison time hanging over his head. And his mother, Valesha Parker, finally pled guilty in March of 2026 and was sentenced on the 1st of May 2026 to 364 days in jail, which closed out the very last case in a killing that had happened 3.5 years earlier. Now, here's the thing about Eric Haynes that the law had to work around, because he admitted in open court that he never intended for Zaria to die. That was never the plan, since the plan was for RC. The plan was to kill the new boyfriend or beat him, depending on which version of his story you want to take. And Zaria answering that door was not part of any of it. And the law says that doesn't save you, not even a little bit. Because when you hand a 15-year-old a loaded 9mm and send him through somebody's front door with instructions to shoot, you own everything that comes out of that door. That's what first-degree felony murder means, and that's exactly what he pled guilty to on the 1st of April 2024. Life with 30 years before he can even ask to be let out. At the sentencing hearing, Zaria's people got up and spoke for an entire hour, including her mother, Maria Greer, who now has to listen to a little girl ask, "Where's mommy?" and her father, Presley McKeever, who had been calling more often trying to protect her daughter from a distance, and her sister, who lost the one person she had planned her entire life around. And it didn't even stop there, because the only thing Eric Haynes ever bothered to appeal was the money. The court had ordered him to pay $17,026.06, most of it going to Zaria's aunt, her cousin, and her stepmother, to cover the funeral, the travel to bury her, and the travel to sit through court hearings about her death. In July of 2025, the Minnesota Supreme Court looked at his complaint and shut it all the way down because he never objected back when he had the chance to. So the only fight this man was willing to take all the way to the highest court in the state was a fight about paying for the funeral of the woman he had killed. Now look at these three women side by side, because that's the whole reason we put them in one video. Shanice Young had 3 orders of protection. Kiera Hudson had an order of protection, a bulletproof vest, video evidence already sitting in the hands of police, and a domestic violence advocate working her case. Zaria McKeever had no contact orders and was 2 days away from moving to Texas. All 3 of them saw it coming, told somebody, and did exactly what we tell women to do. All 3 of those men are serving decades now, 40 to life, 25 to life, and life with 30. And that's what accountability looks like on the back end. But none of that brings back a woman who was 5 days from meeting her daughter, or a woman who was on her way to a custody hearing, or a woman who had already picked out her baby's name before she was even pregnant. Zaria's sister said one last thing, and if you take nothing else away from this video, please take this.
If you see signs, if you notice things, if you get vibes about people, like literally, like, you know, start calling police and making reports and protect yourself by any means, like, because you never know what could happen.
Say what you see. And when a woman tells you she's scared, believe her the first time she says it.
People are killing people over little petty stuff. It just seems like it's just easy for them. I don't know what's going on around here. Something's got to happen. Something's got to happen to stop all this.
This is Lanaya Dawson, a 20-year-old mother and aspiring rapper from Cincinnati, Ohio. Her life, filled with promise and ambition, would come to a chilling end in the cold shadows of Mount Airy Forest on December 7th, 2024. Just after midnight, her body was discovered along Trail Ridge Road, a desolate stretch of Cincinnati's largest park. She'd been shot, left alone in the darkness, with no witnesses to explain what happened. The silence of the forest concealed the violence that had unfolded, leaving only questions in its wake. For her loved ones, the discovery was devastating. They were left not only to grieve, but to wrestle with the haunting mystery of why and who might want Lanaya, a young mother with dreams of building a future, would be taken from them so suddenly. And as the investigation continues, one truth remains. Someone out there knows what happened. Someone holds the answers to the questions that still torment her family. But before we uncover the chilling day that her life was tragically taken, let's rewind to the start of this tragic story. Born on April 18, 2004, Lanaya grew up in Cincinnati's Evanston neighborhood, a close-knit community where families looked out for each other. From an early age, she displayed charisma and intelligence, the kind of young woman who drew people in with her energy. Lanaya attended local schools in the Cincinnati area, excelling socially and earning the respect of her peers and teachers alike. As she grew older, Lanaya discovered a passion for music, particularly rap. Performing under the stage name Nia Jordan, she began creating content that showcased her bold personality and uncompromising attitude toward life.
Bitch hating on her, wish she on your block get hectic. My niggas been eating, they ready for seconds. Your bitch call, say she wanna sex me. Text to the room and make her undress. When the police give a habit, don't panic. This time you don't know me, and my name's Cindy. Circle so small, yeah, I hang with a few. Bitch back stank, so I gave her the boo. Since you got her back in these streets. If you beefing, better ride with the heat. If you ride with a skill, keep it clean. Make sure ain't no battery scene. New bitch be thinking on jeans. Real niggas take one for the team.
Her music was shared primarily on social media platforms like Facebook and YouTube, reflecting her ambition to carve out her own space in the music world. While she had not yet achieved mainstream recognition, rap was central to her identity and her dreams for the future. At 19 years old, Lanaya became a mother. Her daughter was her world, and friends and family consistently described Lanaya's devotion.
I ain't sleep, let me kiss again.
She balanced the demands of young motherhood with her ambitions in music, creating a delicate equilibrium between responsibility and self-expression. In her Evanston neighborhood, Lanaya was known to be kind-hearted, with no known enemies or conflicts. She was a young mother trying to build a better life, surrounded by family and friends who loved her. So it was a huge surprise when she would be found dead. On December 6, 2024, Lanaya went about her day like any other. She texted with her mother, ran errands, and tended to her personal responsibilities. There was no indication of distress, no signs that she felt threatened or in danger, and certainly no plans that would hint at the tragedy to come. That night, she ended up on Trail Ridge Road, a remote area within Mount Airy Forest, Cincinnati's largest public park. Mount Airy Forest spans over 1,400 acres, a peaceful retreat by day where hikers, joggers, and families enjoy nature. But by night, its winding trails become dark, isolated, and dangerous. The section of Trail Ridge Road where Lanaya was found is particularly remote, typically closed to vehicle traffic at night, creating pockets of complete darkness. This isolation made it the perfect setting for a violent act to go unnoticed. At approximately 12:28 a.m. on December 7th, Cincinnati Police Department officers were dispatched to the forest after someone reported an unresponsive person along the roadway. Upon arrival, they discovered Lanaya Dawson lying alone on the trail, her body showing the fatal impact of gunshot wounds. Cincinnati Fire Department personnel pronounced her dead at the scene. Investigators found 8 9mm shell casings scattered near her body, suggesting that multiple shots had been fired. Pools of blood on the ground confirmed that she had been shot at this location, rather than killed elsewhere and transported to the forest. This evidence indicated a deliberate act, carried out in a location chosen for its isolation and lack of witnesses. The circumstances of Lanaya's death raised troubling questions. Had she been lured to the forest, followed, or forced to go there? Was the killer someone she knew and trusted, someone who planned the murder knowing the area would be deserted at that hour? The crime scene investigators immediately classified her death as a homicide, marking the beginning of a complex investigation into her final hours. Following the discovery of Lanaya Dawson's body in Mount Airy Forest, Cincinnati police immediately began the painstaking process of investigating her murder. Officers cordoned off Trail Ridge Road, preserving the scene while forensic teams documented every detail. The 9mm shell casings, pools of blood, and the positioning of her body were carefully photographed and cataloged. Investigators needed to determine whether she had been killed on the spot or transported there after being shot elsewhere, but early evidence pointed to the former, the blood patterns suggesting that the shooting had occurred at the location where her body was found. Detectives canvassed the area, seeking any witnesses who might have seen something that night. Mount Airy Forest is popular during the day, but its late-night visitors were few and far between. Officers knocked on doors in nearby neighborhoods, checked traffic cameras along main roads leading to the forest, and canvassed social media for anyone posting about unusual activity. Despite these efforts, no one reported seeing Lanaya with anyone that night. No suspicious vehicles and no gunshots were reported by locals. The isolation that made Trail Ridge Road an ideal location for the attack complicated the investigation significantly. Investigators reviewed Lanaya's phone records, social media activity, and text messages from the evening before her death. They sought to reconstruct her movements, determine if she had met anyone that night, and identify anyone who might have a motive to harm her. Her phone showed no messages indicating fear or threats in the hours leading up to her murder, but detectives noted several interactions with friends and acquaintances that would require follow-up. Every conversation, every missed call could hold a clue.
Tonight, a family is asking for answers after a 20-year-old mother was shot in Mount Airy Forest. WLWT News 5's Daisy Kershaw speaking with her loved ones tonight. She now joins us live with the latest on this case and their fight for justice. Hey there, Daisy.
Rachel, Lanaya Dawson's family says she was a loving older sister, a mother, and a caring friend to all. Just after midnight on Saturday, Cincinnati police say she was shot and killed and left in the forest.
She was a beautiful person and a beautiful soul. She kept us laughing all the time. And I would do anything in the world for her.
Grief weighs heavy on the family of Lanaya Dawson.
It's just too much.
Just before 12:30 Saturday morning, Lanaya's body was discovered on Trail Ridge Road in the Mount Airy Forest. Cincinnati police say she was shot and killed. The person who pulled the trigger taking off.
I just remember the scream and her yelling, Lanaya is dead, is dead, and it just keeps playing over and over and over in my head.
Because she did not deserve this, to be shot in the head and left in the cold and left to...
Her mother, Nyrisha Dawson, now mourning her little girl, mourning the future that was stolen from her.
She still had a whole life ahead of her.
Lanaya leaves behind a 1-year-old daughter.
She's been saying, "Mommy, mommy, mommy."
And they do need to find justice for her because it's not fair for her child to grow up and not have justice. When she grow up, she's gonna have questions, and we need to have answers for her.
Right now, they're still left with those questions. Lanaya's loved ones praying they won't go unanswered.
We need someone to speak out. Think about it as if it was your family member, your daughter, your sister, your brother, your auntie, your uncle, someone that you love. Think about that.
At this time, Cincinnati police have not shared any updates on suspects and no arrests have been made. If you have any information about Lanaya Dawson's, you're asked to call Crime Stoppers or reach out to the homicide unit at Cincinnati Police. Reporting live tonight from District 3, Daisy Kershaw, WLWT News 5.
Just heartbreaking, Daisy. Thank you.
Forensics teams examined the shell casings and other evidence at the scene. Ballistics testing would later confirm that the bullets were fired from a single 9mm handgun. Fingerprints and DNA swabs were taken from the surrounding area, including nearby trees, leaves, and the forest floor. While no weapon was immediately recovered, officers knew that locating it could provide a critical breakthrough. Detectives also sought to determine whether Lanaya knew her attacker, given the isolated nature of the crime scene. Cases involving young women killed in wooded areas often suggest a perpetrator with some connection or familiarity with the victim. Cincinnati homicide detectives began interviewing Lanaya's family, friends, and neighbors. Her mother, Nyrisha Dawson, provided critical insight into Lanaya's recent life, including her routines, relationships, and potential conflicts. She described her daughter as responsible, loving, and ambitious, with no known enemies. Lanaya's extended family also spoke about her social circle, trying to identify anyone who might have been capable of violence. Despite these efforts, the family could not point to any specific individual who would want to harm Lanaya, deepening the mystery of why she had ended up in the forest that night. As detectives traced Lanaya's movements on December 6th and 7th, they discovered that she had spent the day running errands, preparing for her daughter's care, and interacting with friends online. Security footage from local stores and traffic cameras provided timestamps that helped narrow the window in which she could have been lured or forced into the forest. Officers noted that Lanaya had left her home in Evanston in the late evening, around 11:15 p.m., according to witness accounts, and her body was discovered approximately 1 hour later. That hour became a critical period for the investigation, as detectives sought to determine who Lanaya had encountered and whether she had willingly entered the forest or had been coerced. Cincinnati police also examined historical crime data for patterns in the city, particularly cases involving young black women killed in isolated areas. Analysts noted similarities between Lanaya's case and previous unsolved murders, including victims like Jason Wynn, a 22-year-old aspiring rapper killed in 2006.
10 years, a family has waited for answers in the murder of a young father. Someone robbed and Jason Wynn in the parking lot of an Avondale church, and whoever did it is still out there somewhere. Angela Ingram joins us now with the family's plea for help. Angela?
Cammie, Jason's father has hoped that homicide detectives would call him and tell him the case is finally solved and that they have a suspect, but so far it hasn't happened. The family is hoping that someone has it in their heart to come forward and tell what they know. In the wind and rain, a loyal group of people gathers to support Terry Jones. Years of pain and unanswered questions show on his face. It's the face of a father who has lost his son.
10 years, can't believe it. 10 years and nothing, still don't know anything.
Jason Wynn was shot during a robbery in a church parking lot on Forest Avenue exactly 10 years ago today. The 22-year-old had just walked his son and girlfriend to a bus stop close by. The church is now gone. It's demolished. But for 10 years, Terry Jones has come back to the area with supporters.
So I was elected to head of vigilance to keep it out in the open, and I'm hoping somebody will come want to help me, or want to help my family, or even help themselves. It's crazy out here.
Jason's unsolved murder has been featured on the Ohio Attorney General's website, on posters and playing cards, but still no answers and no peace for this family. Although 10 years have passed, his father says it feels like it happened just yesterday.
And at that time, I was at home, I was sick. I was watching TV. When I seen it, I didn't want to believe it, but it was him.
And this year was even more painful for the family. This is the first year that Jason's mother was not at the vigil. She died last Christmas Eve without ever finding out who killed her son. Live in the newsroom, Angela Ingram, Local 12 News. Cammie, back to you.
So sad, Angela. Thank you. If you have any information that can help police, call our partners at Crime Stoppers. The number is 352-3040.
And Taylor Robinson, a 19-year-old woman who disappeared in 2013. Both cases shared hallmarks of urban violence, isolation, minimal witnesses, and slow investigative progress. While these connections did not indicate a serial offender, they did underscore the vulnerabilities that young black women faced in the city, often leaving them targeted and overlooked. A key breakthrough came from the forensic team's analysis of trace evidence at the scene. Small fibers found on Lanaya's clothing did not match her own wardrobe, suggesting a struggle or physical contact with another person before her death. Additionally, microscopic soil samples collected from her shoes indicated she had been in an area not immediately adjacent to Trail Ridge Road, possibly suggesting she had been moved or had walked through a different section of the forest before being shot. Detectives used this information to narrow down the search for potential drop-off points, hidden paths, and secluded areas that a suspect might have used. The lack of eyewitnesses meant detectives had to rely heavily on forensic evidence. DNA swabs, ballistics, and trace evidence would become central to identifying a suspect. Investigators also explored the possibility of a vehicle being involved, checking traffic patterns and nearby streets for suspicious cars. They asked residents to review dashcam footage from the night of the murder, hoping someone might have inadvertently captured something useful. Police urged the community to come forward with any information, no matter how small. Even a seemingly minor observation could be the key to breaking the case open. Tips submitted to Crime Stoppers were immediately vetted by detectives, with more than a dozen leads initially investigated, including individuals Lanaya had interacted with in the days leading up to her death. The early investigation revealed one critical fact. Lanaya had not acted recklessly or gone to the forest unaccompanied without cause. Her interactions that day suggested normal behavior for a young mother balancing work, personal care, and family responsibilities. This reinforced the grim conclusion that someone had targeted her, exploiting the isolation of Trail Ridge Road to commit murder. Lanaya Dawson's death unfolded during what became one of the most violent weekends Hamilton County had seen in 2024. Her killing was recorded as Cincinnati's 69th homicide of the year, a grim milestone in a city already struggling with a surge in deadly crime.
Well, family and friends gather tonight to remember a young mother who Cincinnati police say was shot and killed just after midnight. Thank you for joining us and staying up late with us tonight. I'm Brittany Harry. The family of Lanaya Dawson says they want justice for her. Our Mike Shell attended a vigil and has more on this story you will only see on Fox 19 Now.
Lanaya meant a lot to us. She was my baby, but she also was everybody's baby too. She was the life of the party. She was very fun, outgoing. You can always call her and she'll be there for you.
Family and friends huddled in the parking lot near Walnut Hills High School to remember the young mother of a 1-year-old daughter. They spelled out her initials in candles and said prayers that the person responsible for her death would be found.
At this point right now, we just need prayers, we need answers, we need everything that we need in order to, move forward and have peace in our heart, because I just don't think that she deserved nothing that has happened to her today.
According to Cincinnati police, Naya's body was found around 12:30 Saturday morning, lying on Trail Ridge Road. Officers say she suffered a gunshot wound, and when an EMS crew arrived, they had determined that she had. Trail Ridge Road is in a secluded section of Mount Airy Forest. Pedestrians can access the street, but the area is closed off to vehicle traffic. Nyrisha Dawson says she was texting with her daughter just hours before she found out what had happened.
That's what's so weird to me, because it's like, Dad, if I knew that her life was in danger in any type of way, she already knows she can call on any of us and we all be there for her.
After some words of encouragement said at the gathering, the group simultaneously released the balloons that they had brought to remember Naya.
This is not real to me. I can't even believe that I'm standing here talking to you about this right now with all these people behind us, and it's sad. She was a young lady. She didn't deserve that.
Anyone with information on what happened to Naya is asked to call Crime Stoppers 513-352-3040. In Walnut Hills, Mike Shell, Fox 19 Now.
That same weekend, violence erupted across the county. In an unrelated incident, 28-year-old Darius Lacher was murdered, and in Elmwood Place, a teenager was shot and killed. The string of killings created a wave of fear and frustration in the community, underscoring the scale of the crisis. For law enforcement, the simultaneous tragedies stretched resources to their limits. Detectives working Lanaya's case were forced to investigate her murder while juggling multiple other high-profile investigations. This environment of overlapping homicides meant that each case competed for attention, slowing progress and intensifying the pressure on police to deliver answers. Community leaders pointed to the weekend as evidence of a broader problem. Cincinnati's homicide rate was climbing, and young people were disproportionately caught in the crossfire. Lanaya's murder, alongside the others, became part of a troubling narrative about escalating violence, strained police resources, and the urgent need for intervention. As the city grappled with another young woman lost to violence, Lanaya's death became part of a broader conversation about safety, community responsibility, and the systemic failures that disproportionately affected Black women. Her family, friends, and neighbors held vigils in her honor, spelling out her initials in candles and releasing balloons into the night sky as prayers and memories rose with the flames. The grief of those who loved her is compounded by the fact that, as of now, no arrests have been made, leaving her murder unsolved. The story of Lanaya Dawson is heartbreaking in its immediacy. It reminds us that young Black women, particularly mothers and aspiring artists, face disproportionate risks of violence in communities across America. Her case underscores the systemic challenges in investigating such crimes, the gaps in protection for vulnerable individuals, and the urgent need for justice.
Don't waste your life. Set your goals high. Quit thinking about what's wrong. Start thinking what's right. Love a little more, hate a little less. You have no idea what you're capable of doing. Make up your mind today, you're going to figure it out.
Spin on your block, get hectic. When we spin on your block, get hectic. My niggas been eating, they ready for seconds. Yo, bitch call, says she wanna sex me, take to the...
Lanaya's case highlighted not only the challenges of investigating murders in isolated locations, but also the systemic issues that hinder the protection of young black women. Limited surveillance, lack of witnesses, and community fear all contributed to the slow pace of the investigation. As police continued their efforts, the story of Lanaya Dawson became a call to action for both law enforcement and the community to ensure that vulnerable individuals receive protection and that justice is served. Lanaya's death is one of promise, resilience, and love. At just 20 years old, she was a young mother determined to build a brighter future for her daughter. She balanced the challenges of motherhood with her passion for music, carving out a space for herself as a rising rapper in Cincinnati. Her creativity, humor, and authenticity drew people in, and those who knew her remembered her as vibrant, ambitious, and deeply caring. Her death in Mount Airy Forest was not just the loss of a statistic in the city's homicide count. It was the silencing of a voice that had only begun to be heard. A child lost her mother, a family lost their anchor, and a community lost a young woman who embodied both strength and vulnerability. Lanaya's life mattered. Her memory continues to inspire those who refuse to let her story fade. But her case remains unresolved. Justice has not yet been delivered, and her family continues to live with the pain of unanswered questions. They have spoken out, pleading for accountability and urging anyone with knowledge of what happened to come forward. If you know anything about the circumstances surrounding Lanaya Dawson's death or have information that could help identify her killer, please contact the Cincinnati Police Department. Even the smallest detail could make a difference. Lanaya's legacy should not be defined by violence. It should be remembered for her love, her art, and her determination to rise above hardship. By speaking her name, by demanding justice, and by refusing to let her case be forgotten, we honor her life and ensure that her daughter grows up knowing her story mattered.
And so neighbors I spoke to today tell me that they're shocked. They say that this home behind me here has always looked as it does right now with the blinds closed. So they had absolutely no idea of what was going on inside.
You've got a woman who's being held captive, and that is a pure form of coercive control, which is a form of abuse. People might think it's easy to just leave, but if you're suffering from some sort of disability, the chances are greater that you can't leave.
Imagine being disabled, waking up every single morning in the same locked room. No phone, no sunlight, no visitors, unless he decided you deserved it. And the only thing standing between you and starvation was a single egg left on a nightstand by the man who promised to love you forever. This wasn't a stranger, this was her husband. And while he smiled at neighbors, drove to work, and played the role of a respectable family man, Ruby Rivera Johnson was living inside an invisible prison. Not for a week, not for a month, but for 5 long years, trapped inside a bedroom of their $1 million mansion in Clear Lake, Texas. Behind the closed blinds of that luxury home, James Earl Johnson had built a nightmare. He controlled her food, her freedom, her voice. To the outside world, he was a master electrician earning $18,000 a month, a man with status and stability. But inside, he was punishing his disabled wife in ways no one could see. And it was one mistake, one phone left within reach, that would finally expose him, tearing down the facade and revealing the horror hidden behind wealth and respectability. Now, let's talk about the man who would become the center of Ruby's world for over 10 years. James Earl Johnson, a 46-year-old man who, according to everyone who knew him, was the definition of a devoted husband, a hard-working provider, and well-known community member. On the surface, James Earl Johnson seemed like the picture of success. At 46, he had built a career as a master electrician in Houston, earning $18,000 a month. He lived in a sprawling 6,783 square foot mansion on Crown Ridge Court, a home valued at over $1 million, with 5 bedrooms,
8 bathrooms and immaculate landscaping. Neighbors greeted him by name, his family attended community events, and everything about his life suggested stability, responsibility, and trustworthiness. To outsiders, he was exactly what a husband, father, and community member should be. But as often happens, appearances can be dangerously deceiving. Behind the pristine facade, James was orchestrating a nightmare that would remain hidden for years. Court documents and law enforcement reports now paint a chilling picture. A man who created a system of control and terror within his own home. His wife, Ruby Rivera Johnson, 46, a disabled woman, was trapped in a carefully constructed prison. While the specifics of her disability have not been publicly disclosed, it was severe enough to prevent her from living independently, leaving her entirely reliant on her husband. This reliance, however, became a tool of abuse as James manipulated, isolated, and starved her over a period of 5 years. And the horrors of her daily life were almost unimaginable. Ruby's existence was strictly scheduled. She was confined to a single bedroom, denied access to a phone, and largely cut off from medical care. Her meals were carefully rationed, 1 egg left on a nightstand each morning, and a second tiny meal only when James returned home at night. The days blurred together in a cycle of hunger, loneliness, and silence. Every aspect of her life was controlled, stripped of her own control, and reduced to the most basic survival. 5 years passed in this way, each day a repetition of deprivation and confinement, with the walls of her room becoming both her prison and the only reality she knew. But James's control extended far beyond Ruby. The household itself became an instrument of domination. Her adult children, living in the same home, walked past her locked bedroom every day. Court reports indicate that they had been instructed by their father to stay silent about her condition. Whether they fully understood the depth of Ruby's suffering remains unclear, but James's influence ensured that the silence of the household concealed the abuse, allowing him to maintain the illusion of a normal, happy family. His manipulation was so thorough that every corner of the home, every interaction, and every routine reinforced Ruby's captivity. And the most terrifying part? This nightmare unfolded right under the nose of a seemingly ordinary community. Neighbors had no reason to suspect anything. From the outside, the Johnson household looked like any other: manicured lawns, polite greetings, and a family that participated in social events. But inside, the reality was vastly different. Ruby's life had been stripped of freedom, her body and mind conditioned by hunger, fear, and isolation. Her days and nights were defined by survival, not by the warmth and support a spouse is supposed to provide. By the time law enforcement finally intervened, the full scale of the abuse was shocking. The abuse went undetected for years. In November 2025, Ruby had managed to place a call to the police. Officers responded to the home, but Ruby and her children had been instructed by James to remain silent. Because of that, the officers had no option but to leave without filing a report. No documentation was made, no follow-up occurred, and Ruby remained trapped. 4 more months passed in the same cycle of deprivation and fear, her cries unheard, her suffering invisible. Then, on March 6, 2026, James made the mistake that would expose him. James left his phone on the nightstand, and Ruby saw it. This was her chance. If she ever wanted to escape from this prison, she had to act now and fast. For the first time in years, she had a lifeline. Summoning every ounce of courage in her, Ruby picked up the phone immediately and dialed 911. By then, the psychological and physical abuse she had endured had forged an unbreakable resilience. But James's immediate response revealed the depth of his control. He caught her in the act, and without remorse, he struck her, carried her back to the bed. He proceeded to hang up the 911 call himself. He tried to erase the evidence of her desperate attempt, but it was too late. That single moment, that single oversight would shatter the secret that he had maintained for half a decade. Within moments of her 911 call, authorities were mobilizing toward the Crown Ridge Court home, finally confronting the reality of what had been hidden in plain sight for 5 years. Whoever picked the call knew something was wrong, and they needed to check what was going on. And their guess was right, as what they would uncover inside that mansion was far worse than anyone could have imagined. When detectives arrived and searched the house, they uncovered more than anyone expected. Behind the polished look of the mansion was a hidden prison. The bedroom where Ruby had been kept told the story of years of neglect, bare walls, locked doors, and the silence of someone trapped. The investigators saw the truth. This was not a home, but a place of control and suffering. The accolades of the mansion had hidden a nightmare inside. Every detail they found, the restricted food, the lack of medical care, the isolation, proved that Ruby had been living in captivity. When officers arrived, the first priority was Ruby's safety. Medics were brought in to assess her condition and transport her to a hospital for immediate care. Her health, already compromised by years of minimal nutrition, isolation, and lack of medical attention, required urgent evaluation. Meanwhile, law enforcement secured the house, ensuring that no one could tamper with the scene while investigators arrived. The initial assessment revealed the horrifying scope of James's control. The bedroom where Ruby had been confined was locked and had been modified to prevent her escape. Investigators began documenting everything: the locks, the physical setup of the room, and evidence of prolonged deprivation, including the single egg left as her daily sustenance. Officers collected any materials that could serve as evidence, from household items used to enforce control to items indicating the abuse's duration and severity. This case was no longer a report of potential abuse. It was now a full-blown felony investigation. James had already demonstrated through his actions that he would resist accountability, including the physical altercation immediately after Ruby's 911 call. Every step in the process required careful handling to ensure Ruby's testimony could be documented accurately and preserved for prosecution. Investigators also had to consider the children living in the house, both as potential witnesses and as individuals who might have been manipulated by Johnson. The investigation team began methodically, building a case that would withstand scrutiny in court. They interviewed Ruby, collecting her account of 5 years of captivity, the restrictions imposed on her, and the physical and emotional abuse she endured. Forensic teams combed through the mansion, documenting structural modifications, potential tools of confinement, and any evidence linking Johnson to the systematic abuse.
Right now, a man accused of locking his disabled wife in a bedroom for years is out of jail. James Earl Johnson of Clear Lake is charged with felony abandonment of an elderly or disabled person and injury. Prosecutors say he kept her in a bedroom for 5 years with no phone, limited food, and no way to escape in an emergency. Court documents allege the victim was able to call for help after Johnson left his phone on a nightstand. He's due back in court next Wednesday.
Officers also examined prior interactions with law enforcement, including the November 2025 incident when Ruby had previously tried to reach help. The prior response, or lack thereof, highlighted systemic failures. The investigation needed to include not just the current crime, but also patterns demonstrating how James had manipulated and controlled Ruby over the years. Investigators collected statements from neighbors and community members, though many had no knowledge of the abuse. They gathered digital evidence, including any records of communications Ruby might have been able to send, as well as records of James's movements and activities to establish patterns of control and premeditation. Every element was meticulously documented. They needed to prepare a case strong enough for felony prosecution. The investigation emphasized the duration, severity, and calculated nature of James's actions, demonstrating a deliberate, ongoing pattern of abuse rather than isolated incidents. The culmination of this rapid response and investigation was the arrest of James Earl Johnson on the morning of March 6, 2026, the same day Ruby was saved. Police took him into custody without incident. He was formally charged with injury to a disabled individual and abandoning or endangering a disabled individual, both felonies under Texas law. Following his arrest, James Earl Johnson was booked at Harris County Jail. He was ordered to post bond and subjected to restrictions, including wearing a GPS monitor, having no contact with Ruby, being prohibited from possessing a firearm, and barred from returning to the family home. Reports indicated that Johnson initially went to stay with a nephew and had not retained legal counsel immediately after the arrest.
Meanwhile, Ruby, who was transported to a local hospital for ongoing care by the authorities' quick action, ensured that she received medical attention and began the process of recovery. Her adult son confirmed her hospitalization, but declined to comment further on her condition or disability. The arrest marked the beginning of a legal process designed to hold James Earl Johnson accountable for his deliberate, systematic abuse. If convicted, he faces up to 30 years in prison for both charges combined, 10 years for each felony, and fines of up to $10,000 per charge.
Police say a man held his wife captive for 5 years inside their $1 million home in Clear Lake.
It went undetected until last week, even though we've learned police responded to the house late last year. ABC 13's Luke Jones live at police headquarters. And Luke, this is a bit of an unusual one.
Yeah, talk about unusual. She was held captive for 5 years, and neighbors were learning about it from us today. Now, we spoke briefly with the victim's adult son, who tells us his mom's now in the hospital. He didn't elaborate on her condition, but we know from court records she is disabled. From the outside looking in, what some might consider a dream home. But police say for one woman, the house at Crown Ridge Court was in fact a house of horrors. Investigators say the 46-year-old woman who's disabled was allegedly held captive in a bedroom for 5 years by her own husband.
James Johnson?
James Earl Johnson, arrested Friday morning, but has since bonded out of jail with an order to stay away from the victim and the house, where the couple's children also reside. It's here, court documents say, the victim was held under lock and key with no phone access. Finally, Friday, police say her husband left a phone on the nightstand, which he used to call 911. But police say Johnson cut the call short, his wife, and carrying her back to bed, then hanging up on the 911 dispatcher.
You've got a woman who's being held captive, and that is a pure form of coercive control, which is a form of abuse.
Chow Win is a trauma therapist. While police haven't specified what the victim's disability was, Win says it likely left her more vulnerable.
People might think it's easy to just leave, but if you're suffering from some sort of disability, the chances are greater that you can't leave.
She appears to have made at least one previous attempt. November 16th, Houston police say she called them out to the house, but when officers got here, they say the victim told them she and her children were told to stay quiet and not to say anything. Officers left without taking a report.
And over time, there's fear, there's dependence. Sometimes there's even a trauma bond between the victim and the abuser.
I wanted to ask Johnson himself about these allegations. We tried contacting him today at the number he listed on court paperwork. So far, we haven't heard back. At last check, he's not hired his own attorney, but his court-appointed attorney at that probable cause hearing said he plans to stay with a nephew. Live downtown tonight, Luke Jones, ABC 13, Eyewitness News.
Prosecutors emphasized that the charges reflect the severity of controlling and endangering a vulnerable, disabled individual over a prolonged period. This investigation and arrest highlight both the danger of coercive control and the challenges of detecting long-term abuse hidden within a seemingly normal household. James Earl Johnson's capture, after years of hidden abuse, underscores the importance of survivor advocacy, persistence, and law enforcement intervention once the abuse is revealed. The sheer audacity of this crime lies not only in the length and severity of the abuse, but in how easily it remained hidden. Neighbors, community members, and even the police in November 2025 had no idea Ruby was being held captive behind that mansion's walls. James's outwardly respectable image and meticulously constructed routines concealed a 5-year campaign of control, deprivation, and violence. One of the most troubling parts of this case isn't just the captivity, it's what happened when Ruby first reached out for help. On November 16, 2025, she managed to call police from inside the home. Responding officers arrived at the mansion, but Ruby and her children, instructed by James not to speak, did not tell them what was happening. The officers left without documenting anything. That moment has become central to public conversation about law enforcement response protocols, especially when vulnerable individuals make limited or indirect contact with police. Many advocates have pointed to that missed opportunity as a critical failure. Ruby Rivera Johnson's escape and call for help were not a matter of luck. They were an act of survival, patience, and immense courage. After 5 years of enduring systematic abuse and manipulation, she finally took a decisive step that shattered the prison her husband had constructed. This case is a stark reminder of how domestic abuse can exist in plain sight, hidden behind wealth, appearances, and the facade of normalcy. Cases like Ruby Rivera Johnson's highlight a disturbing reality. Abuse and captivity can exist undetected for years, even in seemingly ordinary or affluent households. Cases of hidden captivity and long-term domestic abuse reveal one of the most unsettling truths about human behavior. Imaginable cruelty can exist behind the walls of homes that look perfectly ordinary. These situations often unfold quietly, shielded by appearances of stability and success, while the victim's suffering remains invisible to neighbors, friends, and even authorities. What makes them so chilling is not only the abuse itself, but the way it is concealed in plain sight. In many of these cases, the abuser maintains a carefully crafted public image. They may appear hardworking, financially stable, or even respected in their community. Outwardly, they seem trustworthy, but behind closed doors, they exert total control over a vulnerable person, often a spouse, partner, or child, whose ability to resist is limited by disability, dependence, or fear. This duality between public respectability and private cruelty is a recurring theme in captivity cases worldwide. Victims in such circumstances are typically isolated from the outside world. They may be confined to a single room, denied access to phones or computers, and cut off from medical care. Their daily lives are reduced to survival, with food rationed and freedom stripped away. Over time, the isolation becomes a prison not only of walls, but of the mind. The victim learns that speaking out could bring punishment, and silence becomes the only way to endure. Family members or others living in the same household are sometimes drawn into the cycle of control. In some cases, they are manipulated into compliance, instructed to remain silent, or made to believe that the victim's condition is normal. This creates an environment where abuse can continue unchecked, even when multiple people are aware of the situation. The abuser's authority becomes absolute, extending beyond the victim to everyone around them. Law enforcement and social services face unique challenges with these cases. Victims may be too frightened to speak when officers arrive, or their silence may be misinterpreted as consent. Without clear evidence, sometimes authorities leave without taking action, allowing the abuse to continue. These missed opportunities highlight systemic weaknesses, the difficulty of detecting hidden abuse, the reliance on victims to self-report, and the lack of follow-up when suspicions arise. The broader lesson is that abuse doesn't always happen in remote cabins or hidden basements. It can unfold inside million-dollar homes, suburban houses, or apartments in busy neighborhoods. The setting may look ordinary, but the reality inside can be a nightmare. This contrast between appearance and reality is what shocks communities when the truth finally comes out. Another common thread in captivity cases is the moment of exposure. Often it is a small mistake by the abuser, a forgotten lock, a misplaced phone, a brief lapse in control that gives the victim a chance to reach out. That single moment can break years of silence and trigger an investigation. Once authorities step inside and document the conditions, the carefully maintained facade collapses and the hidden abuse is revealed. These cases remind us of the importance of vigilance. Communities must recognize that abuse can be invisible, and systems must be prepared to act decisively when evidence surfaces. Awareness campaigns, training for law enforcement, and stronger protections for vulnerable individuals are all critical steps to prevent similar tragedies. And in Ruby's case, it was exactly that, a single mistake, one phone left within reach that exposed the hidden reality and forced the system to confront what had been ignored for far too long.
A Clear Lake man is now facing multiple felony charges after investigators say he locked his disabled wife inside of a bedroom of their $1 million Clear Lake home for years. Police say the woman was recently able to call for some help. Fox 26 reporter Leslie Delaspore is live outside that home with the latest on this disturbing case. Leslie.
Yeah, that's right, Caroline. So neighbors I spoke to today tell me that they're shocked. They say that this home behind me here has always looked as it does right now with the blinds closed. So they had absolutely no idea of what was going on inside. A horror story was happening inside this $1 million home on Crown Ridge Court in Clear Lake, right next to the Bay Oaks Country Club golf course. Houston police say officers responded to the home around 7 a.m. March 6th after 46-year-old Ruby Rivera Johnson called for help. Investigators say the woman told police her husband, 46-year-old James Earl Johnson, had been locking her inside a bedroom against her will for years. She also told police she was not properly fed, sometimes given just 1 egg a day and dinner. Court records say the woman, who has disabilities, was confined to a bedroom for 5 years without phone access, proper nutrition, or medical care. Documents say she was finally able to call 911 after Johnson left a phone on the nightstand, but investigators say he later carried her back to bed after hanging up the call. HPD says officers were previously called to the home in November of 2025, but investigators say the wife told them the husband allegedly told her and the children to remain quiet when police arrived. Neighbors say nothing seemed out of the ordinary, describing Johnson as active in the neighborhood, even attending events like National Night Out. One trauma therapist says people with disabilities are at a greater risk for abuse, and victims in cases like this can face a very long road to healing.
You know, stories like this make me feel so compassionate and heartened for the survivor in this case, the victim in this case, who's had to live with a form of abuse we call coercive control. But the wounds that are created by this form of abuse, psychological, emotional, physical, can be long-lasting and quite devastating. The victim finally sought some help, which led to some physical violence. But make no mistake, if somebody's being held against their will for 5+ years, this abuse was long-standing. But the road to recovery can be long and hard, but help is available through counseling, through support. There is a lot of help out there. Fortunately, there is a lot of help available in our communities. There are resources, counselors, domestic violence organizations, hotlines. So if you see something that doesn't look altogether normal, might be suspicious, let them know, listen, and say, you know what, here's some resources.
Investigators say the case remains under investigation. Now, Johnson's bail was set at $100,000, but court documents do show that at this time he has bonded out. Reporting live from Clear Lake, Leslie Delaspore, Fox 26 News.
Neighbors described James Johnson as polite, welcoming, and well-known in the area. He appeared at community events like National Night Out and interacted freely with people in the neighborhood, which makes the reported captivity all the more shocking. The case rapidly drew attention because it illustrates how abuse can remain hidden even when outward appearances suggest normalcy and stability. Ruby's 5-year confinement was not obvious to anyone outside the home, not neighbors, not friends, and not even police on their first visit. As of March 2026, James Earl Johnson is awaiting trial. Multiple news outlets report that court dates are scheduled, but no conviction has been reached yet. Ruby Rivera Johnson has been released from the home and remains under medical care, though specific details about her health and disability have not been publicly disclosed out of respect for her privacy. This incident shows how coercive control, where someone uses psychological, economic, and physical dominance to keep another person isolated and dependent, can be overlooked when it's wrapped in normal life. James Johnson lived a routine, respectable life in the community while allegedly keeping his wife secluded in a locked room for years. It's a sobering reminder that abuse doesn't always look like it does in movies or headlines. It can hide behind wealth, privilege, and the quiet routines of everyday life. And often, survivors make a call for help when and how they can, sometimes only once, in the hope that someone will finally listen. Ruby Rivera Johnson did just that, and her story is now being heard. What James Earl Johnson had orchestrated was not a fleeting act of cruelty, but a systematic, long-term exploitation of a vulnerable woman, a case that demonstrates how appearances can conceal imaginable horror. To the outside world, he was a successful electrician living in a $1 million mansion. Inside those walls, however, Ruby Rivera Johnson's life was reduced to survival under his control. The tragedy of Ruby Rivera Johnson is a stark reminder of the silent suffering that can take place behind closed doors and how easily a life can be controlled when power, manipulation, and fear are combined. For 5 years, her world had been reduced to the walls of a bedroom, the ration of an egg, and the cruelly enforced obedience demanded by the very man she trusted. What do you think about it? Let us know in the comments below. And if you found this story intriguing, please like, share, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this.